Are you drinking coffee at 5 p.m.?
I am, yeah.
And it's not like Indianapolis time is any different. So clearly you had you
Nope,
partied hard somehow on the way home.
Yeah, I have a bit of a problem. This can of Lysol was in my view the entire weekend. We got there and somebody just left this there. And then Scott Bregman from the Olympic channel, this is his seat actually. So all of us gals, because it was all women besides Scott this weekend covering the meet, we were just like, they think Scott needs extra disinfectant.
That was my teammate in college, actually.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Would you agree, Syque?
He's a pretty clean guy, I think.
No.
But I think you guys needed the disinfectant from him.
Yeah, exactly. We were just like, stay away, Scott. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gymnasts on Zoom Drinking Coffee. I'm your host, Patricia Duffy, and I am joined today by Syque from Stanford men's gymnastics and 2012 London Olympian, and then Ambert Yeung, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, and former Stanford gymnast as well, although we keep that on the DL. Thank you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm really glad you reached out, Syque. I want y'all to kind of jump in and let me know a little bit more of your background and let viewers get to know you a little bit more beyond what I just introed y'all at. So Syque, kick it off, and then you can swing it over to Ambert.
I'm Syque Caesar. I'm currently one of the assistant coaches at Stanford University for the men's gymnastics program. My background in gymnastics, I went to the University of Michigan. I was on that team for 6 years. I believe, actually, I was the first 6th year in gymnastics. And we won 2010, 13, and 14 NCAA champs. So there's that. And then I joined the Stanford coaching staff in summer of 2015 and have been here in Palo Alto ever since. I actually just came back from Winter Cup last week, where I took Riley Luce out there, and he did a phenomenal job, finished second in the all-around and earned his spot on the senior national team. So really proud of him. Just a little background on the Stanford situation. There's been a lot of talk going on, what's going on. It's been crazy, frankly. And we've had it pretty bad here in terms of regular training and scheduling and all that. We had a big group not on campus for a long time as they were training for Winter Cup. And the reason for that is if they were to come back to campus with it, which had just opened up early February, they would have had a quarantine for 10 days, which would have put a hinder on their training. Unfortunately, this crazy winter storm hit in Texas the week before Winter Cup, and that the hindrance of their training already happened, so we had to withdraw them. Nonetheless, we brought them back here, so now our full team is back together training, and it's really, really exciting. I'm glad to have them back and the energy in the gym, and it's great. Over the summer during quarantine, we had a lot of free time to think about what to do with our sport, because frankly, it's not been in a good position for a long time. And teams like Iowa, William & Mary, and Minnesota were on the chopping block. Luckily, William & Mary was able to pull themselves back out of it, and they've got another year extension. And in the time, the head coach at Stanford, Tom Gleamy, he had this idea of like, well, how long is this quarantine going to go for? We don't really know. How can we continue doing competitions in a virtual space, where people don't have to travel? That was the real idea behind it. And right off the bat, I was like, let's call Ambert. And Ambert had been working previously on some other pretty high-end technology. And so I had known him for about a year and a half. And I knew based on his experience in that realm that I was thinking, this guy is ready now. He knows what he needs to know about gymnastics to make this thing happen. And and so I'll hand it off to Ambert.
Awesome. I almost don't need to talk anymore. I appreciate that intro, Syque. Very, very nice. So I'm Ambert Yeung. I did do gymnastics as a young person, and I was somewhat picked off the the Streets by Tom Galimi to do some gymnastics during our inflection point as a team before it has blossomed into what it is today, at least for the last 10 years. And I'm just a person who is, I believe that people who do gymnastics in general, and at least from my perspective, because I generally only know the men's side of it well, there's so much talent in and out of the sport, but especially later on, now that I have a little perspective on, having been out of it for a while and now coming back to help somewhere in a different capacity, I find the archetype of a male gymnast, at least from my time, but definitely now, is just somebody who is so driven to learn new things, fail all the time, and just keep going for it despite any kind of real strong incentive scheme, either financially or even, socially many times. And it's just amazing to see those people get as far as they do wherever they, end their journey. And so I left the sport in 2005 with just probably the most fondest of memories of the sport, because I had thought I'd be done at age 17. And so I had an injury at age 17. I moved overseas for about a year before I came back to the US for college. And so I thought, I'd finished my 10 years of gymnastics and happy to, go to college with a blank slate. But when I got to college, I had been recruited. Thank you, Sadao. He had done a wonderful job somewhat recruiting me. And then I didn't actually join the team to explore other things. And so I always felt that there was something missing, incomplete about my gymnastics career. And I was never good enough to go on to worlds and, anything even remotely close to that. It just so happens that my year was the most stacked year. There's probably more stacked years now, but it was the Paul Hamm, Morgan Hamm year. That's my class. And so if you ended up even on the second page of that year, you were doing okay, right? And so knowing that I knew that was my fit into this whole space, I just had this personal thing where I wanted to have some kind of completion with the sport. And so Tom, somehow, he was a pretty new head coach at the time. The team was definitely not in a very strong place. He was just looking for people who could do gymnastics, period. And so he picked me out of the adult class, as he puts it. He noticed that I wasn't normal 4 p.m. adult class material. And so I walked on and I was able to do 2 years of college gymnastics. And to me, because you never have that experience as a junior, really competing as a team, having the opportunity to travel for your sport, even if it's, to Cal 4 times in a season, and then just being part of these guys who I had known, but not really known for most of my young life, right? You know those names, you knew they came from different parts of the country, but you don't really know them until you are between 18 and 22 and you're living, competing, training, and all this kind of stuff. And so after those 2 years, I just felt totally just fortunate to have that unique experience. And mainly because I had gone out and come back, right? I'd gone out and said I had all the time, all the freedom and whatnot to explore, but there is still something that drew me back to the sport. And I still had enough physicality to be able to still do it, And so to me, that's always been the theme is you got to go out to come back to appreciate that experience. And so after I graduated, I went out, did work. My background's in hardware technology, so I did mechanical engineering. But I always wanted to at least help foster something back to the gymnastics community because I thought it was such a rich development experience and also a rich kind of sport, maybe underappreciated and definitely more and more increasingly difficult over the years. And so my last real job was with Apple and their products design team, and it was amazing. I was overseas working on, all the famous products like the Apple Watch, iPad, some iPhone work, and it was just like the dream come true. Yeah. When I came home, though, to the United States, I just wanted to reconnect with communities that I had not, been a part of for a while. And that included my local community here in California, but really the gymnastics community too. And so when I kind of cleared everything from my schedule, I said, I actually think that gymnastics is a wonderful place to invest in some development of technology, really because each person doing it, they just need better tools to succeed because it's already so hard to survive in the sport, right? In the old apprenticeship kind of manner, which I would consider. And so that's what Syque is kind of referring to. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I just wanted to contribute something in that space. And so that kind of gets us to today, because last year I had worked on what was a search engine for gymnastics videos. So you could type in a skill and it would pop up, all of the videos that have that skill by time, exactly where it is. And to me, that was very interesting. But when COVID happened and I had kind of let that project chill out for a little bit, it really made a lot of sense, because not only could we advance something really big with, the delivery of gymnastics through video competition, but also was absolutely something that was needed. And I think Tom and a few other people had that foresight to say, we're probably going to need this. And it's going to be in like a year or so. And so maybe we should even try to figure it out now.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets us to the present day.
So that something is Virtius. Some people might pronounce it as Virtuous, but it's Virtius. And that platform is now up and running in a year's time, which seems like a big order for something like that in such a short amount of time. But I guess we also maybe had a little bit more time on our hands the past year, not to negate the time frame that it was built in or created in. But I mean, what was that kind of like process like for you guys? And I mean, Ambert, you seem like not to negate you, Syque, at all, but Ambert, you obviously seem like the brains behind getting it all designed, and what was kind of went into that process, and then to get to today and to get it, launched for the start of the NCAA season.
The whole process, bringing like the group together, was back in April. I'd say we'd spend the next 2.5 months in what I'd like to say is like early research and development, and what works, what doesn't work. For me, like I'm a complete gym nut, by the way. Like I'm a huge fan. I'm looking at all the Gymternet stuff, seeing what our community and fans like really want out of gymnastics. I've been a huge proponent of trying to push our sport, the men's side, to have at least a little bit of viewership or gain some more viewership. So I came from a place of trying to get more engagement and enthusiasm for the men's side, specifically because at least at the collegiate level, a lot of these guys are training for like national team, world championships, and Olympics, in fact. And like, that's a huge point that kind of gets missed. And so I came from this point, like gymnastics isn't that hard to understand if it's presented in a really, really good way. So yeah. I'm also a brevet level judge as well. So I was like, okay, here's like the simple breakdown of how you make this easier. Everyone keeps, we're 8, 9, 10 years into this code of points, the no perfect 10 thing, and people still are looking for the perfect 10. And so first off, we're like, okay, we want this, make it so easy that when you have a production, you don't have to ask, well, how did the score happen? It doesn't make sense. It does make sense by the presentation of the platform if you go on it. So we looked at what looked good on TV. Okay, like this is good that they have the scores and the lineup, but then halfway through the meet, if you don't have the scores that's going on, how do you know who's winning?
Yeah.
Watch a basketball game, the scores are up the whole time, you know which team is winning. Mm-hmm. So we decided to kind of change the format and go back to an old school format, which is let's go head to head. And it's literally one guy at a time, and this guy scores this guy's got to beat him. This guy scores this guy's got to beat him, and make it just super easy to follow. Just makes sense. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Rotation change, left, right. Where right now, in a typical dual meet and on the men's side, one team would start on floor, one team would start on horse. They'd go through the full rotation, then flip-flop. Mm-hmm. That's comparing apples to orange. You can't compare a floor score to a horse score. You have to wait for 2 full rotations, and now you know what the score is, where now it's like literally each person, like you can see what that score differential is. So I wanted it to be very followable or easy to understand. And that's kind of the thing I try to bring to, attention. And Ambert created this, we went through this stuff. Like I was dabbling with some video editing and doing all this stuff. And I was just like, all right, this is going nowhere. And then Ambert shows up to one of our Zoom meetings and he says, okay, this is how I've laid out basically what we call the producer interface. And then, like, he like started talking and I just interrupted him. And I said, that's what we're doing. Change everything we talked about. This is it right here. And it's literally what you see today as the interface, the two screens, the scoreboard, like it was like that. And I was, I think, anticipated to be like in the background. No one would see that. And I said, no, this is how we need to present the sport. Like, this is it. And then from that moment, that's, you know, the rest is history. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say from April, he's talking about July 19th when that happened. Mm-hmm. And so between April, when we first got this phone call about this idea, to July, actually, it was a really, I would say it's a really desperate time, because every single week we looked at one way to do this, right? With things that already existed. Because obviously at that point, everybody was trying to figure out stay at home and work from home and remote everything. And so there was a lot of pressure on my side, because I really wanted to give them something that they could just say, okay, we could use this. And then I was done. I could go back to my life. And so it was almost like a self-preservation thing, where every week I came up with a new tool that I had researched, I had learned to use, and that I could demo to this group. And there was no insignificant work there. And so, you know, one week we started obviously with Zoom, and then we did Zoom webinars, and then we did Skype, and then we probably used Microsoft Teams. Like, literally, we went through every single thing in the playbook. Mm-hmm. And then by, call it June of that year, we had gotten so deep into like remote production, you know, like things like vMix, these tools where people legitimately have careers doing. And by July, I was about to give up. And I said, I've presented to you everything that is available. And the answer to what we have here is either it's too consumer-based, for lack of a better word, like, yeah, it's great for me having a teleconference with my buddies on Zoom, and it's wonderful, but it's not good enough to run an NCAA meet that's pretty high quality, with high quality gymnastics. And then on the other end, it was like, well, where are we going to get a production team that can literally produce remotely at that level with those tools, with that skill set, up to 80 competitions in 4 months, right? For a full season. I'm like, I don't know where you can even find that skill set, much less pay for it, right? And so that was pretty much my conclusion. I said, my job is done here. This is probably mid-July. My job is done here. I don't know what to tell you, but my recommendation is you have these two versions and you can pick the free or the can't afford, right? And that was at the point where I said, but wait, if you're going to actually try to do like the Zoom version, right? Because that seems to be probably where you're headed. You just need one thing to make it really work. Mm-hmm. You need a scoreboard, right? And you need a way to put the scores in there, and that's it, right? And the way to just kind of sequence and follow along, organize the competition, right? And that's when I got busy, like one afternoon. I said, well, if you're going to have a scoreboard, you're going to have your Zoom video, and it's going to be like this, and you're just going back and forth. That's it. And so I think from that point on, I was very skeptical about when Syque was like, that's it. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that so many times. Like, let's play this out a little bit. But then quickly, the other people who were in the room, I have to give credit to Tom Gleamy and David Eaton, they started saying the same thing. And I was like, I think these guys are just setting me up to do something that I probably don't want to do, right? Like when everybody's saying yes, you better say no until you really figure out what. And so they quickly convinced me that maybe this was it. And I had to convince myself, not just from a 2D image, that maybe it really was it. Mm-hmm. And so that started probably a 2-week sprint of building a prototype that actually functioned relatively okay. That eventually became our first YouTube video demo, which then became the piece that we used to show the world.
With that, like I've been sitting here listening to both of you, and I just, you listen to how complex you see the product, you see the basic, not that it's basic, but you see when you type Virtius and you look it up and things like that, you see what comes up. And there's just so many pieces behind the scenes and everything. I've been sitting here just writing down all these questions because it is like you were talking about, Ambert, like it seems very basic and it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, but at the same time, like from a normal person perspective, where I'm not going to be designing anything like this, there are a lot of questions. I mean, how does it work? How does the production, you mentioned that, like the judging, and then you get it all, like right now it's free. Is there going to have to be a paid version down the line, or is the plan for it to be free forever? How do all these pieces play together to be able to support this?
I think you have a kind of a two-part question. One is the finances, and then I think the other part is more about like the product and how it works. Right? I'll just give you a very short version of how it works. It works very much like a Zoom call would work, but just simplified right now, we're focused on dual meets, right? Because the complexities of running a remote production are very high. And so for us, actually, it's really a nice fit to be able to deliver this format of competition that was very specific to the needs of the NCAA, that didn't have all the complexity of like a full 3-day session, 6 up, whatever, like craziness. And so the way it works is you have cameras, call it consumer level, but really high quality cameras in the shape of an iPhone or a really nice Android phone in 2 different locations with reasonable enough bandwidth to be able to deliver high quality, judgeable video. That's the key thing that really made all the difference and really made it not the Zoom version. When I first started talking with judges, one of their biggest worries when they were being approached to judge virtually, obviously was connectivity and bandwidth. But in the real time, because I don't even think anybody else has really done real time the way that we have done. They've done Zoom plus a backup camera, whatever. But to do literally real time and judging in real time, you have to have high frame rate, really high quality video delivered in almost real time, right? Otherwise, any brevet 1 or 2 would never put their name on that score. Because when the vault came down, they're like, Kaz-ish? Yeah. You don't know. I wouldn't put my name on that, right? And so that was the feedback we got very quickly. And so it immediately made us have to decide that we have to deliver high frame rate, high quality all the time, and make every single site look the same across the country, right? Because it needs to be fair, right? All the angles should be easy for everybody to see. And that was a lot of work that Syque had put in. But then in terms of the product itself, right, that gives you the videos, right, live. But then the other part of it, which is the scoreboard and the score input, right, that was the magic that we always felt like was lacking from anybody who's ever tried to follow a competition in our last 20 years, right? And so that was a real good opportunity for us to say, everybody, even the pros, have trouble following the meet, much less the people who don't know anything about gymnastics definitely have trouble following the meet. Yeah. And so for us, it was all about, can you present everything everybody needs, no more, no less. You can drill into specifics like scorecards and all the details of E's and D's and stick bonuses and neutral deduction if you want. But at any given time, Patricia, Joey, whoever can literally get onto our scoreboard and our interface and know exactly what's going on. Even if you don't know the sport, you know who's winning, you know who's losing, you know who's going, who's next, and that's it. It's a very simple request, but never been done well and integrated with the videos.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the product. And so you can produce a dual meet in just over 2 hours, head to head. The key thing is this, and I saw this on Twitter the other day, very good observation. In 2 hours of broadcast, how much gymnastics is really being shown versus other things, commercials, commentary, fill in the blank, whatever. Maybe the ratio is 30%. I don't know what they concluded. But the difference is for our dual meet, we show all 72, roughly, plus or minus, right? All 72 routines end to end, 72. Every single athlete, whether you're a star national team member or just the person who made the lineup this week gets their 1 minute or 2 minutes or whatever, their claim to fame. And to me, college is somewhat about that. Of course, you want to see the stars and you want to see the highlights, but college gymnastics is about giving everybody a chance to show and contribute to the whole thing. And so that's the theme, and that's the essence of what this product is.
Yeah. And then, so building off of that, I mean, right now, there's this other issue in gymnastics that a lot of people are talking about, which is not on the collegiate level, but with USA Gymnastics signing a 5-year streaming deal with Flow Gymnastics, and the repercussions of that, which is, you know, there's no longer anything that's on the Flow Gymnastics platform is not going to be like published onto YouTube afterwards. So kids who just made the lineup, obviously in elite, that's a little bit different, but kids who just barely qualified, or maybe they're juniors or whatever, can just go onto YouTube and find that archive of their routines like you can right now, or previously with USA Gymnastics just streaming stuff for free on YouTube, what have you. And so that begs the question with a platform like this, you know, how do you make it free? I mean, what are the financial aspects? Not obviously you don't have to give me the full rundown, but how do you produce this product and get the judges participating and all this other stuff? I mean, I guess there's the NCAA. I'm sure there's some funding, you know, just like any NCAA meet happens, those judges are getting paid. So I'm sure there's some NCAA funding, but how do you make the platform free, and can you keep it free?
It's an awesome question. And I've thought about this for a very long time, because I think when you go down this pathway, you're becoming a digital content delivery, call it platform tool product, right? And so whether you're Netflix, Disney Plus, or Flow Gymnastics or Virtius, there's still a handful of things that you need to consider, right? It's production costs, right? It's legal and who owns the content at what point in time, right? It's who are the players and who is the ecosystem that you're trying to deliver to the world? Are they elite athletes? Are they juniors? Are they college under some umbrella of college, you know, rules and plenty of regulations? And so the answer to that is the tool that we have today is actually a very generalizable tool. My dream was for it to be able to be used as a pickup match. So we can literally do a match, finish one routine, 1 versus 1, 2 different locations, 2 all-stars, finish in 5 minutes, right? Or at this point, we can produce a much more sophisticated event like an NCAA meet, but we are still not at a point where we can do like a full-blown 6 event in parallel with, I don't know, 50, 100 athletes at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, I think I would love to make as much content accessible, because we are in this strange space where I don't even want to consider like gymnastics by itself. Like men's gymnastics and women's gymnastics are different everything, right? And they're related, yes, but they are actually different for marketing purposes, the way that they budget a lot of things, the peak of the athletes and, you know, those, you know, whatever, and even the culture, right? It just so happens is that they share gymnastics and it rolls up. And so when I look at what USAG has done, right, and trying to be objective, I understand the pain and the hurt that many people are expressing online. I totally at least can acknowledge it. I can't relate, but I acknowledge it. And when you put something behind paywall, we've talked about this a lot actually with our product and also with the people that we're serving right now.
Yeah.
When you put a paywall in front of it, right, I'm okay with that, but you better have as much content as the other services that are comparable in that kind of paywall. I'll give you an example. So I pay $10 for Netflix or whatever it is, but I also share the family plan with my brother and other people. So really the marginal price for me for literally 10 lifetimes of streaming entertainment is optimized.
Yeah.
Right? The difference is when you go into niche markets like what Flow covers or what we cover, right? The difference is you don't have those economies of scale, first of all, with your content. Your fan base is absolutely tiny, but they love the hell out of the content, right? But you're also in a situation that if you make them pay twice as much, call it 3 times as much for the subscription, but you reduce the amount of content by 100x, I don't even know, right? How much available content
Probably
in
more
gymnastics
than that.
Totally. And then you say, because I add production value to it, which for sure costs money, it costs $10,000, $100,000 for a crew to come and show up, set up, and cover your meet easily, right? You have to do that. So you do need to justify charging as a business, right? But when you look at that, the consumer is not really interested in paying for that because they really just want access to some content, right? And the production value is questionable about whether or not it really makes a fan at all different levels love the sport even more. In fact, I think it's somewhat opposite in certain respects. And so I think the key thing is, for us, it's been awesome because we've been able to focus on the clientele that we're working with now. The challenge I imagine, like Lily and USAG, is they're trying to do one for everybody, right? Because when they make a deal for 5 years and they have these exclusive deals, it's so hard for them to manage fragmentation as an organization that they do have to have monopolies, because it's simpler to kind of have that storyline as opposed to every year you're changing streaming provider. So I understand that motivation, and you can't make one service fit all the umbrella items equally. And so from my standpoint, what I've been so encouraged about is that the community, people like yourself, people like the athletes, both retired and up and coming, right? You have to trust that they actually know what they want and what they like, because every single person now is an expert in content, right? They are consuming content and being fed by the Googles, by the Facebooks, by the Twitters, by the TikToks. Like every single thing is a content machine trying to fight for your eyeballs. Flow is no different. Virtius is no different. USAG, frankly, when they deliver the competitions, is really no different, right? And so in order to really connect with their community and know what they need in terms of how you deliver their competitions, what they should pay for, and figuring out the business model to support that, right? I think my approach, because I'm not motivated by making money off of this, I'm motivated by developing something that they can use first, is that you need to get that right. And then from my standpoint, as call it the person trying to build a business, support future work of this, it's actually my job to get the business right, not the consumer's job to get it right. They will pay when they think it's fair. And so that kind of gets us to the point of, so what do we do going forward, right? Because there's something specific to what Virtius is doing, but maybe there's something to glean out of the more generalizable. Like in general, is there a model or two that the gymnastics community could actually benefit from when they create content, when they deliver content, when they serve their fans and everybody else, right? And I think there is. And so I think to summarize what that is, we know that the ecosystem of gymnastics is supported at the base by all those people who aspire, whether they're 5 years old, all the way up through whatever age that they get to. We know that. That is the base, and that needs to be healthy, right? The people up top, they're really that pinnacle. They're that shining star that allows everybody else to look up to them for what they represent, what they do. And a lot of those people actually don't realize it. Like when you're in college, you don't realize that hundreds of kids, they aspire to be as good as you. You're a college kid. What do you know? You're only worried about whatever you're worried about, right? But when I was young, I looked up to people, not even in my sport, who were like college basketball. I lived next to Princeton, right? I went to watch some of their games. I'm like 5 foot, whatever. I'm never going to be a basketball player, but I saw them and I said, wow, they're so cool. I would love to be able to compete like them one day for some school. That's all I needed in my brain. That's the inception, right? And so for us, we need to make sure that the base is healthy, because if we figure out how to make those guys want to do it, right? The kids at all ages want to do it. And we give the gym owners, right, something to benefit, because I've heard anecdotally that that number has been cut from 3,500 down to much less than that in the last 2 years. But I've heard the coolest thing as of last weekend, where because of lockdown, parents are so enthusiastic about bringing kids back into the gym as soon as they open, because that's where all these kids let off their energy. And so there's going to be a resurgence at the base level of gymnastics, which I think is encouraging. But if you're talking about how does that relate to digital content, here's how it relates to digital content, right? Most digital content that's created at the junior levels, honestly, their purpose is for the people in your inner circle.
Yeah.
Friends, family, people across the country, right? Generally speaking, that's who it's for. And I know from experience that those people, they pay for everything, right? And they're paying for a travel, career, whatever. And if you deliver them something that makes their kid look good in context, that is better than what they can take on their phone, because it might be as seen by the judge, right? And you do a little organization, because ain't nobody have time to organize their videos, right? And not just once, but the whole season, or maybe even longer than that, over more time, right? There is value in that. And value for the parents, value for the kids, and whatnot. Sorry, I'm probably killing the time thing.
No, you're fine. You're fine. We can go.
Okay.
Syque, are you raising your hand?
Syque might have to run.
Just gonna say quickly, it's clear that the fan base was not happy about the deal that was struck between Flow Gymnastics and USAG. Key thing being paying for the content. I don't think it's the paying for the content. I think it's paying for the quality of the content, and the price point versus the quality didn't match up. And so I think that rubbed people the wrong way, on top of issues that they've done previously with, posting content that they should have dropped right away. And that was very eye-opening for me, because I was always wondering, when parents have kids come to a competition, there's a gate fee, $10-15 or whatever. That's how club owners and meet directors make money. But I never thought that being able to just view and watch gymnastics should be behind a paywall, let alone a $12 a month or $30 a month price point. It's, to me, ridiculous. And I'm a huge gym nerd. I'm one of those guys that will find some backwoods website that is in a different language to find free streaming, And so a big conversation we've been having over the last 10, 11 months was like, if I'm not going to pay for it, you can guarantee no one's going to pay for it, because I'm going to go out of my way to find a way to watch it for free.
And that's what product managers and management need to hear. Because if you haven't had that interview with somebody like Syque, who is hardcore fan, who is unwilling to pay, your business model is already broken.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I'll be a little bit more direct. I actually think that this tool can enable gym owners to actually do way more with what they already have. We know that gym owners make a substantial amount of the annual revenue on running their events, right? Yeah. Now, but anytime you mention doing something with technology, in addition to that, it's like too much. It's scary. But we live in a world where actually that is part of the product, right? And so for us, we think because we've designed something that could be used to help them not only produce, because we've already done it in a challenging way, but to also deliver streaming content, but also to deliver post-game content in a very nice and organized fashion, right? That there could be a very, very nice discussion with them to be able to make their events actually have virtual participants. Yeah. So now they have more people attending their meet, interesting form. And then for, ticket sales and whatnot, I believe there is a good place for a paywall, but for the right people in that context, because honestly, outside of that, the gymnastics is not for general consumption.
Yeah.
And so leave that alone. Use it for that purpose. And so if we can get that right, we can make business owners successful, right? Then we will have every other business right to support, which is what we always want, is these other parts of the ecosystem that honestly, they don't really have a big money-making stream. Like NCAA teams, they're running a deficit 1 million to 2 million a year. That's never going to change. And if you don't give them a revenue stream, even the best schools that have full ticket sales on the women's side can't even cover their budget. So if that doesn't work, there's no other way to make this work. And so for me, I think it's to establish a business that can actually be pretty good serving the base of the community so that we can free up cash and other ways to invest and help these guys do what they need to do. That's the model that we're looking for.
Yeah. So what I'm kind of taking from that is like, y'all get the product right, y'all get what you're providing to the community right, to the quality that you think is, serves the community right. And then if there is a paid version, or if you are buying into it at whatever cost it is going to somehow help those programs and be able to offset those like types of deficits that you're talking about. Is that correct?
At different levels, I think it's a different story, right? So if you're talking about like college level versus, juniors and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are different things, but
totally.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And then, so that also leads into the one question that I have written down, which is there, and I don't think this is the case, but maybe I missed something, but is there a chance to expand this to women's NCAA down the line? Like I know Stanford women just had like their first meet this past weekend. And basically, as far as the gym internet went, nobody knew what was happening. They just found the score sheets, and I think that was about it, which is so odd for women's gym, obviously. So is there a women's option down the line? And then it is a two-parter again. Like, do you think in general this meet format is better for the team gymnastics aspect? Because you talked about being able to watch back to back and being able to, even in like the in-person setting, is this a good way to kind of lay it out in the future? Sorry, that's two different ones, but like women's option, expanding to that, which I think is definitely going to be a yes. And then the meet format in general, because it's a lot easier to follow for the generalized viewer.
Yeah. One thing that I've learned in the course of this whole year is I know nothing about women's gymnastics. And that's where I start. Every single time I try to have a conversation, it's not because I've done gymnastics or whatever. Like, I just know nothing about women's gymnastics. I just want to hear what people want and need. What was really important about just kind of having that blank slate is their needs at different levels are very different, right? And if you don't really pay attention to that, you would think that, again, your one solution fits all, and it doesn't, right? And so one of the core reasons why this is used on the men's side now, and probably not, even though we didn't really, work on it very hard, on the women's side, is because they actually have a lot of good stuff going for them in various areas, right? They do have a great format because, number one, 4 events is just very efficient, right? They do have gymnastics that's easy to compare because of the scoring system. They've all kind of driven to certain skills and length of routine and whatever, right? So there's less variety, but it's easy for fans to follow. So they don't have that same problem as men's, right? And because they actually put on a wonderful live production. Like when I watch on YouTube, I haven't been to many, schools around the country and their live production. I get excited about it because there's colors, there's music, there's confetti, there's lights, there's sparkles, right? There's energy. There's like people dancing a lot. Like, if this isn't a good show, I don't know what is, right? This is completely not what the men's situation is whatsoever, right? And so if you just recognize, I say, they put on a production, so they should have production grade resources. Now, SECs and some of those big, Big Tens, they do, because it is popular. Like 10,000, 50,000 views on YouTube is enough to justify that, that delivery, that investment, right? Now, some of the smaller schools actually, I've heard, are suffering the same way that kind of the men's are, because number one, it's so bipolar in terms of lots of coverage, very exciting, big budget, and no, even though they also do women's gymnastics, right? And so there's a conversation and a narrative that I think is important. If I approach anybody on both sides of the table, would you like to expand your viewer base? Who would say no to that? Right? That is where you start. Would you like your fans to interact more with not only your content, but also your gymnastics experience, right? Yes, right? When you say, would you like to replace your real live meet with a virtual competition, low budget? What? No, right? And so if you start with that, you're already in trouble. Yeah. But if you start with that with the men because they had zero production and they need low budget to survive, then they're like, hell yeah, sign me up. And so that's the difference in these two conversations. And if you don't make, you choose your adventure, like did it and go the wrong direction, you're done.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned in this process. And so I would love to be able to help these folks expand, make more accessible, have interactions with their fans, because it actually works on both sides of the two sports, right? But the way that we convey it, we need to demonstrate it first to the world before they can say, oh, this is actually a marketing tool for us to reach more of an audience.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you start that conversation.
Okay. Makes sense. And I didn't even actually think about when I asked that question initially. I totally threw out in my brain the difference in the men's and women's scoring, which is obviously a big game changer because, like you said, the viewing of the men's makes a lot more sense side by side and doing that alternating and stuff because you can follow it a lot more easy versus the women. Everybody's throwing your chinko full on vault, and it's not too difficult to compare throughout the meet.
When you see it, 995, 10-0, 98.
Yeah, exactly. And
roughly.
And that's a whole, when you're talking about, obviously not from the viewing aspect, but the scoring aspect, that's a whole different debate and conversation that everybody in the gymnastics community continues to have.
Totally.
About, which one is better and if the men should go back to it. Yada, yada, yada. So we won't go down that road. That's a totally different thing.
But we would love to try, because I think somebody needs to take some risk and try it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the key of this last year. Just the only thing, the key about this year is many people say, oh, we need to change this and change that. And nothing gets done because people just go right back to what they've been doing for a long, long time. There's too much inertia there.
Yeah.
Right? But if it can't happen in this year, frankly, it will never happen. Right. And so what I encourage people is take a chance. This sport needs to reinvent itself maybe every 20 years for some purpose. Somebody needs to take it. Maybe not the big teams who already have a wonderful following. You maybe don't need to, but somebody needs to take it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then, so going off of just the platform in general, kind of getting into more of the nitty gritty aspects, and sure. Something that Syque pointed out to me the other week when we first talked is and this is, I don't know if this is something more Syque would talk about or what have you, but with the judging aspect of it, you mentioned that there was like an all women's judging panel, but then there was somebody from like Belgium or something. So are the judges, so they're virtually tuning in, I assume they're not on site, and then judging these things, or how does that work? Like, how does that aspect work?
Yeah, I can take that on. We've been in close communications with the NGJA, so that's on the men's side, the National Gymnastics Judging Association. I'm a member of that group as well as the coaches, as well as the athlete. Basically, on every front, we've got some sort of connection and communications, ongoing communications going on. What we've unlocked, or what Virtius has unlocked, is the ability for judges who otherwise would not have been able to be there in person to now do it. So one of the needs on the collegiate men's side has always been, and this is from the coaches, that having uniform judging, I know it exists on the women's side, but on the men's side, having uniform judging kind of across the table, the difference between home and away meets. Well, now you can have the judges that are going to be at NCAA championships. That vault judge, I can have him come in. He's maybe in Pennsylvania, our meet's happening in California. He's just 3 hours ahead. We'll figure out the time zone issues. You tune in. On the other front, we can get international judges in too. So the specific judge you're talking about, Kathy Sue Rupp, she's based in Belgium. She's a brevet level judge. She was able to tune in on that competition we had. Another historic first was, this was the first time that I'm aware of, and as far as I can tell, that everyone else is aware of, the first time where we had an all-women judges panel for an NCAA men's gymnastics competition, which otherwise would not have been possible because we had people on the East Coast, we had someone in a different country, and we had two people on the West Coast all tuning in at the same time.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, opening up the opportunities. And so how do we do that? Like I said, we're in communication with the Judging Association and the coaches. The coaches will literally say, oh, we had this meet come up, but we're going to cancel, but can we turn it virtual? Okay, let's schedule that out. Let's figure out the time stuff. We'll let the NGJA know. They'll assign the judges. We'll talk to those judges, train them up, and just run through it. And so I think it takes maybe 2 times for a judge to feel like really comfortable.
Yeah.
I can tell you at Winter Cup, and I literally called Ambert the day later, the day of, and I was like, there is a judge on every single event on the panel that's done a Virtius meet at Winter Cup. Every single one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. That's something that puts it into perspective, the accessibility aspect of it from a judging perspective, that like it can seem like, I guess if you don't know the sport and you're just outside looking in, that it would be difficult to get some people to tune in and do this, but it's accessible for judges, so judges can tune in from wherever they're at. And obviously, if they're doing these meets, and like you said, after 1 or 2 times they're comfortable with it, anybody's going to be uncomfortable, like maybe like the first time doing something like this versus doing it in person. That makes it like, hey, I'm okay with doing this. And then it opens up the opportunities for judges from wherever versus having such a bite-sized, not necessarily bite-sized, but small amount to choose from for in-person judging that can make it into town. And then, like you said, it makes it more less of or kind of eliminates maybe altogether the home and away aspect of judging, because it's women's gymnastics, but still relevant, is like LSU versus Florida the other week. I think like 90% of the judges were from Louisiana or from like that area. So it's just like it always begs the question of bias and favoritism and things like that, versus like if you have a Belgian judge, chances are they don't necessarily have a bias for Stanford versus Cal. They're just like 2 California men's teams. Okay.
Yeah, two things there. You mentioned that LSU Florida. I mean, is that where both teams went 198?
Yes.
Okay, and I think there was a lot of discussion amongst the community, like, was that really 198 both teams? Wow. I'm not going to comment. I don't know anything about women's collegiate gymnastics judging, but there was some fun conversations there, which I had a chuckle reading. As it relates to the judging stuff, yeah, once again, they've been really helpful, that community, and we've opened it up. Like, if you're assigned to this meet and you've never done it, don't freak out. It's all good. We'll make it work, and that's how we started. First, we were really kind of careful and like, we need to make sure everything's controlled. We've got a pretty good kind of operational plan and how to run these things. And now really anyone that gets assigned, right now we're kind of focusing our efforts on the collegiate ranks. When they get assigned and they're like freaking out, they're giving me a call. I'm like, don't worry, it's all good. We'll handle it. You're in good hands, and it's been fine. And that's a big thing, is not having this like barrier to entry. Mm-hmm. Like, really, the only thing is just have pretty good internet, because if your internet's not good, then it's gonna skip. That's anything. You can't stream a movie even. Yeah. So that's really the only thing. And we're hoping everyone could up that their bandwidth. But I think the barrier to entry thing, just kind of knocking that out and then opening up these opportunities to eliminate bias. There's always going to be some biases. Also, like taking the FIG brevet course, it's literally just a video and you get it one time and then you got to put a score, and then they put a next video up and you put a score, and it's like 3.5 hours long, and there's a break in the middle. You don't know if you're in range, out of range, whatever. And these judges, if you may know, at these Virtius meets, they're pretty stringent. I mean, these scores are like, they're tight. They're tighter than even in person. I'd even argue to say they're like closer to like brevet level world championship stuff. And the president of the association, literally before every single Virtius meet, he sends out an email. It's like, make sure you apply like the FIG rules. It's got to be like tight, and it's been tight. So I think that's a good thing, right? Because people come to Virtius meets and they're watching and they're like, oh, yeah, these are tight scores. Like that might have been, I'd almost argue in person, they'd get a higher score.
Yeah.
But
yeah. You know, gosh, I feel like every time one of y'all says something, I come up with more questions.
I do want to say one thing on the all women's panel that we had, because I think it's summarized in like really two things. So my understanding of FIG judging is about isolation. Mm-hmm. They are trying to isolate judges so they objectively are not influenced by anything except for what they see. So they're not supposed to talk. A lot of these types of things are isolation. But what I saw with the way that the panels that we had, especially the all women's panel, was massive collaboration, not in a non-objective way, but really to make sure that every judge can do the best work that they could do. And that's like experience. They didn't know how to set up their whatever. They were helping each other. We didn't even need to train anybody anymore. They're like, hey, we do it like this works, that doesn't work. They're like helping each other.
Yeah.
Then in terms of the rules of the game, there's some fuzziness in certain things, interpretation. And so because they can chat just briefly about it, I feel like that is actually sharpening the pencils for some of the judges who could be elevated to some higher level by the other more senior or more experienced people. So I really like that aspect.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, I like the collaboration, that there is collaboration still, even though they are not in the same place and isolated, things like that. With that being said, and you talked about the almost stricter judging, Syque, and that it's like almost like at an international level. And we talk about this for domestic meets, how domestic meets can be on the elite level can seem like inflated scoring. And just like, oh, this person isn't going to score as well with the international judges. And maybe that's more on the women's side as far as artistry and stuff go, and the men don't have as much of that aspect. But could this be a product down the line that is maybe used among the national teams to be like, hey, we want to bring in for this camp, we want to bring in, these various judges and have like, a exhibition meet or whatever, national team ranking meet or whatever, that says like, just so we can get an idea of how they are going to score internationally and things like that.
That was a great train of thought question that you nailed right on the head. Don't know how much to reveal, so I'll let Ambert take that guy on. I'll let Ambert take that guy on.
Essentially, could this be something that the national teams use to get an idea for international judging, how routines are going to perform on the international basis with these judges?
Totally.
Coming
I think we don't even know, but it's really up to those organizations to figure it out. Like, I don't want to tell them how to do their job because they obviously know better than I. I think what this enables, right? What this enables is two things. Any one of our competitions that have already been done can be used for training, right? That's the key thing, because all the video is the way it was presented. There's no difference. You can say, I wasn't there, so I didn't see it the way you did, and you can never argue that, right? But with what we have is the way we captured is how we presented at the time, after the time. And so what's important is calibration with these judges. And sure, maybe they're generally calibrated higher or lower for whatever the situation is, right? That's okay, as long as you can bring the calibration down when you need to. And so what's really nice too is that for us, honestly, for a judge who hasn't judged before, they could rejudge a whole competition, 10, whatever we have in our portfolio, right? Because we have the scores and it wasn't any different than the way that it was presented at the time. Right? So that's a key thing. And then I think in terms of how do the national teams use it, right? What I like the most about this is the pickup aspect, right? In my imagination at that level, you just need to be able to hit your routine anytime. That's really what an Olympic champion does. They just hit the routine anytime. Perfect, not perfect situation, they still do it. And then for us to be able to simulate that at any time, especially with the cancellations of World Cups, and even just look at the juniors. The juniors don't travel that much because of budget, time, age, opportunity. They just don't, right? And so to me, my dream would be, what if you could do this every week, day? Like, honestly, there's not a whole lot except for time schedules and whether or not you want to do it. And so my thought is like, if you could match up people domestically, national team members, or you can match up international team members, friends, and have them paired with FIG level judges also, right? And so all of a sudden, you've changed the game in terms of, is this practice or play, player competition, competition or practice? Like, it's all whatever you want it to be. But we can still bring all those elements together and produce in 5 minutes or a whole session of 3 hours, right? And so I think that is good for the fans because they can get their bite-sized chunks of little competition. The athletes always get a chance to show that they're really that good, right? They don't have to wait 6 months or a year and only show in 1 minute whether they're good enough or not, right? And so I think it really is an opportunity creator. It's just for the community now to experiment and figure out what format sticks and what is the best way to use it.
Yeah, definitely. And so there is an option there. I mean, I think there's so much potential with this platform in general, and just not just the platform, but the idea behind it and everything. There's a lot of potential for different things down the line. And I'm sure y'all are working and developing them and so on and so forth. But I did want to touch on, and these might be a couple of things before we wrapped it up, that these might be things that more Syque will input on, but obviously, Ambert, you're free to jump in and talk about it. But I did want to touch on Winter Cup real quick this weekend with Riley being the only Stanford guy and rotating by himself and things like that, and kind of in his own little world, getting silver. And obviously making national team. It's his first senior national team, if I'm correct. And just kind of Syque, how that process was, and your thoughts on it, and moving forward, what that looks like for Riley, and just in general, your thoughts on it.
Sure. First off, super proud of him. He did an awesome job. A lot of cards stacked up against him going into the meet. Training alone for 8 months. Really, he was training alone by himself, basically on his own island, and following like our training plan, checking in every week. We had some pretty hard restrictions from a coaching standpoint and at the institution. NCAA gave some ridiculous rules that coaches couldn't even coach athletes virtually. It was ridiculous. Like they couldn't even receive video and feedback and give them feedback unless it was a safety reason. There was some pretty. It was pretty rough. I'll just say that it wasn't easy, and he did a phenomenal job handling those challenges and getting to this level. As you may know, we had a big crew that was supposed to be at Winter Cup. Current student athletes included Ian Gunther, Brandon Briones, Colt Walker, Jeremy Bischoff. Who am I forgetting? We also have
Brody.
And then we had and then postgrads Akash, Modi, and Graham Breckenridge. So those 7 guys had been training at Cypress in Texas down with Tom Meadows, who was awesome, and we're really, really grateful to what he did. He took them on, and I think he enjoyed it. It was a pretty high level training atmosphere for sure. Those guys are they're pretty good. They're pretty good at gymnastics.
And darn it. Is Colin there too? Colin's inside.
Colin's not a Stanford guy. He's an OU grad, but yeah. He's also at Cypress. So Colin was, so that was it was a Stanford centric, but just kind of I'd say a high performance training atmosphere. So you had 4 current senior national team members. At the time, it's a 12-man team. So, it's 25% of the national team was training in one spot. And then you have these 5 other guys like chomping at the bit, and they're at a pretty high level too. So those guys have been training at Cypress this whole time. Riley stayed over at Sacramento at his club gym. He actually moved to another gym during the process. He's from Technique Gymnastics in Sacramento, and he started training at Elevate, where 2 of our other athletes are from. And so those guys, we told them we're trying to best serve them. We don't want to hold off opportunities. If they're going towards national team track, we totally encourage them. We don't want to stop them from doing that. And so we told them, like, if you want to do this, like, we totally encourage it, but here's what we think is the best route. Right now, Stanford's not even open. And we're having this conversation in November, December. Other teams are already training. They start in August. And we're just sitting at home. And these guys are like all over the country. But we told them, if you have a consistent training environment right now, you need to stay there. If it's a good gym, you got a good coach, and you're with the crew, our Stanford guys that know our training situation, go ahead and stay there and train, because when you come back, there's already a mandatory 10-day quarantine upon return. So now you're going to come back, not work out for 10 days, and now you got to compete to try to make national team. That is a terrible situation. Mm-hmm. So things were looking good. Those guys were prepped. They were ready to go. And then, disaster struck. The next thing on our bingo card was the winter storm out of nowhere in Texas. And so those guys were out of the gym for over a week. And, we made a health and safety call, because these guys are doing really, really big gymnastics. I mean, and, they're dangerous if they're not prepped. And so we, withdrew them from the meets. And Riley hadn't had a day off. In fact, he was able to come down and compete twice for Stanford. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Virtius was there to help Stanford continue to have a season, because we can't travel at the moment.
Yeah.
And so we had to withdraw those guys, and so it was just me and Riley that ended up going. And I'm just really happy for him. He's a late bloomer. He made junior national team later in his career, and he's just been training really hard. And at the meet, he turned it up. He did a really good job. And so, that's how it came down to. We did petition our athletes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can give you a little. I can't speak on behalf of the men's program committee, who's going to make the decision hopefully by today, and what the remaining national team members are going to be.
Yeah.
Likely scenario is, I think there are 6 petitions for guys who are already on the national team or were on the national team. So that includes Akash Modi, Grant Breckenridge, Brody Malone, Sam McCulloch, Colin Van Wicklen, and I think Trevor Howard. So that's 6. So they've named the 10 from Winter Cup. So that leaves up to 2 more athletes they need to select. And that could be anyone's game. I'm hoping it's another guy we petitioned who's not on the national team.
Yeah.
But I submitted a ton of petitions the day before the meet. So,
that was the big conversation after the conclusion of guys' event finals and things like that. Is like, we talked with Brett McClure, like the media contingent did, before he went off to the NPC meeting on Sunday night. And he was just like, I mean, we've expanded the team, and there's still it's still a very hard decision of who, because there's so many worthy guys that are ultimately somebody's going to get left off. There's going to be people that are going to get left off, and not even just potentially Stanford petitions, but Illinois' Alex Diab still rings at Winter Cup, and his coach was tweeting out about it, and it seems like there's no doubt there whether he would be on the national team. And like you said, there's so many guys who were already on the national team that will likely be picked up from those petitions. Like Sam is obviously going to get one of those spots. There's almost no doubt about that. And
I think they should do this, and this is not in their rules. It needs to be documented before making these decisions. Because these World Cups got canceled, frankly, it sucks to be a individual event specialist. There's literally no spot for you. It doesn't make sense at all. So what I think they should do is expand the team again. It was 12, and then they had 16, and then we had national team coaches call, and so we expanded it to 18 after that discussion. I think they need to expand it to 20 and take 2 specialists from Winter Cup, and they need to be kind of their own group, potentially an unfunded spot. And those guys, you keep them within the national team track, going to camps, going to these meets, national level meets, in the hopes that after the Olympics, they can go to the World Championships, which is an individual championships. So in the meantime, you have those 2 guys, just kind of setting them to the side. A lot of the current national team members who train all around, they bring at least 1 or 2 events already at a very high level. Mm-hmm. Let's just put it at that. Like, we have several guys that are very good on floor, a couple guys that are really good on high bar. So now that begs those next 2 spots, I think it should go to all around guys, because the next +1 spot for men's gym in the United States is Pan Am Games. Mm-hmm. They can make that team from NCAA championships. They'll look at that stuff, and then guys on the current national team and readiness. And so that's an all-around spot. You're not going to send an individual event guy to get an all-around spot, right? So it just doesn't really make sense, and it's so crappy. It sucks. It's just, this is the cards that have been dealt. All these World Cups got canceled. Like Steven was on track to getting his +1 spot,
Yeah.
right? And that got taken away from him. There's nothing, you can't add it to him. We can't give him a spot. But how do we keep those guys motivated? Alex Diab killed it on rings. Steven did a really good job second day, but Alec Yoder beat him out over a 2-day total. There's some discussion there because is it who has the highest score on a 1-day performance or is a 2-day performance? No other international meet is a 2-day thing. It's always qualification, finals, whatever, new life. So that's what I think they should do. I think they should take 2 specialists from those who competed at Winter Cup and then take 2 more guys on the national team from those who competed at Winter Cup or through petitions.
Yeah.
So that'd be a team of 18 plus 2.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes sense. And there's so many different combinations or select choices that could be made, but it definitely makes sense to keep the specialists, in mind and not just leave them off to the wayside because of what has played out with the all-around World Cup series and the U.S. men's potential for Tokyo in general, because like you said, there is an individual world set for October, and people like Steven and Alex and even Alec, and people like that who have a lot of potential on the higher scoring individual apparatus, shouldn't be left to the wayside just because a couple months later after the Olympics, maybe if there isn't even a +1, if it's just a 4-team all around thing, there's going to be that worlds, and obviously the U.S. men want to be set up for the potential to get as many medals as possible and perform at their best ability at that meet.
But on the flip side, so just kind of, with all this stuff, and it's kind of a crappy thing, these guys will make the national team at Winter Cup late February, let's say March. And we got March, April, May, June. They have to remake the team. They're only going to be on a national team for 4 months. It's kind of crappy. And then they have to remake the team in June for championships. And once you're on team for championships, you go through trials. And you basically maintain your spot all the way until next February. But the thing is, from now until championship, there are no assignments, right? You want to be a national team so you can represent the country at an international assignment. There's no assignments left. So it's kind of a bittersweet national team, to be honest, because there weren't a lot of people, some of the top guys in the country weren't at Winter Cup, and what would that standing have looked like? Because at Winter Cup, it's a clean slate. Championships, clean slate. Doesn't matter who you are. If you don't make points or you don't make all-around score, you're not on team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, so that's kind of also a silver lining for some of the guys that might not get put on the team right now. Is that? Yeah,
that's what I told our guys. I was like, this is really crappy. I feel terrible for you. Like, you guys figured out a way to train in the chaos, away from your team, away from us, from me, Tom, Mark coaching them. Like, that sucks. And then, like, everything is going good. They're sending us training videos and they're looking prepped, and we were going to meet them at Winter Cup, and then that just got taken from them. So I was like, look, there's a silver lining. Anyone that was qualified to Winter Cup is automatically pre-qualified to USA Championship. So you have another shot, to make team. So, like, that's good. The other thing is there's no assignment in 4 months. Like, you make team, you're back to the regular, you're back with your team training college stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other flip side is, hey, at least now you're back with the team and you can train with your team like that. Like, there we go. Now we're like, full circle. So there's a silver lining. But those guys, and it's not just the Stanford guys, all the guys that had to withdraw, like Colin, for example, had to withdraw. Like, it's still tough for sure. Like, they wanted that opportunity, they didn't have it, and it's completely out of their control.
Yeah, and that's another aspect of the whole pandemic, and then just acts of God and nature that happen, like the winter storm, that guys like Colin or any of the Stanford guys or whoever didn't get one of the only chances that you're going to get to compete before U.S. championships, and then everything else that will hopefully happen this year. I think the last topic I'd like to end on is just kind of talking about the rest of the NCAA season. So obviously, like you said, Stanford wouldn't basically be able to have a season without Virtius. But then that begs the question also, obviously the guys are back, as far as I can tell, they're back with y'all, and you're going to be able to put up, full lineups moving forward and things like that. But how does, like, postseason look because it's coming up, and will the school be allowing Stanford to compete in like NCAAs and things like that? And yeah.
Yeah, the county that we're in, like, it's pretty strict, Santa Clara County, but it's been moved up a tier or moved down a tier to a more open level.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are permitted to travel now. So we still have a pretty, like, we missed the whole month of season, right? So we're like trying to scrunch our season into this really tight window.
Yeah.
And so we actually have 2 meets this weekend. We have a meet on Friday and Saturday, or Sunday. We have a Friday meet against Springfield, and that's on Virtius. And then we have an in-person meet on Sunday. Cal is coming here. Of course, it's Cal. And then next week we're flying to Oklahoma, and we're going there to compete. So that's coming up in these next couple weeks. The first part of the season in February, we squeezed in 3 competitions in 10 days, and we only had a week to prepare for the first one, and then it was just nonstop. Mm-hmm. And then we had these last 2 weeks for Winter Cup. No one usually competes during Winter Cup if they have athletes there, just a rest week. And then it's right after March, you try to scrunch in all your meets, and then it's finals week, and then we have MPSFs and championships. So we were supposed to be hosting the MPSF championships. That's now been moved to the Air Force Academy. So we'll be flying to Air Force, and then Minnesota is hosting NCAA championships, which is actually the place where I had my first NCAA championship. So
full circle. Well, that's great. I mean, and it's good to hear that y'all are going to be able to travel. I guess the meet against Cal is going to be your first in-person meet out of all this season, correct?
That's correct.
But it also sounds like everybody should be on the lookout because 2019 NCAA champions are back, and actually back full force, not to negate any of the guys who have been competing in the Virtius competitions, but to have, the ability to put up full lineups and be truly competitive with all the teams is obviously important to being able to defend your national title later this season.
Just a quick plug on that. With those guys that were not training with the team, we only had 10 athletes here, and they're not all all-arounders, right? So we had to put together up to 6 guys on each event. And our first meet, we were literally going 5 up, 5 count on like 3 of the 6 events. And then unfortunately, one of our team captains, Andrew Bittner, went down, and a fluke in my opinion, and I feel terrible for him. He's one of our senior captains. And then we couldn't even put up a full team score in our first meet. And so that kind of played 2 ways. Like it was, it was pretty devastating on our end. But I think some kind of the silver lining in those things is that we compete against William and Mary, who just in the summer were cut. Mm-hmm. And now they were able to come back this year, have their first meet against Stanford, and beat us, regardless of the situation. They beat us.
Yeah.
That's a win and a loss for us and a win for them.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that was like really good for their university, for them to take down the reigning national champions. Mm-hmm. And then we were lucky to have Riley. Like he had to go through some strict and stringent testing protocols to follow the cadence of our protocols here at Stanford. Yeah. We were able to get him to come down and compete and then literally go back. Like he literally drove 2 hours, competed, drove back 2 hours.
Dedication.
Came back. It was like it was pretty nuts. And so even then our first 3 competitions, we only had a 9-man roster, and we had to do 5 up, 5 count on 3 of the 6 events. So I'm really proud of that team because we told those Texas guys, just based on how the collegiate system works with the NQAs and stuff, like you guys can't make NCAA championships unless this 9-man team makes top 12. That's how it is. Like you might be the superstars or whatever, you're not qualified in until this team makes it. So yeah. Like that pressure, and that's a lot of pressure to uphold between only 9 guys to be on the competition floor. So it's, I'm really, really proud of their like tenacity and their just being able to handle it, because that's not easy. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, on the flip side, like, I think we're like 15th right now. We still have a score, like a really low score because we couldn't put up a team score.
Yeah.
But we have those guys back in. We're training them to be at a level. They're going to be doing probably some watered down routines for a bit until they're up to full fitness. But I'm excited to what we will be able to have at the end of the season. It'll be fun to watch this team for sure.
And I guess one more thing is with the senior guys. Have you heard any rumblings with all the interruptions and everything? Are any of them looking to take that extra COVID year, or do you know that? I mean, obviously the other guys can actually take it as well. I think any level or grade, whatever, can take it, but the senior guys particularly, that's a big question with any senior in NCAA men's or women's.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I mean, we could basically return everyone.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, potentially, right?
Yeah.
I think there's some logistical stuff and administrative stuff to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
I think those guys are also trying to figure out. Some guys were already planning on taking a 5th year academically.
Yeah.
And if they'd used up their eligibility, then they were done. But now they're like, well, I'm coming back. We're like, great. Holy crap, our team's going to be too, like, this is a good problem to have, but it is really difficult to make a lineup. Like, for as a coach, to like, we're like, it's so tight, like from like first guy to like 9th guy. And if like you miss, that 9th guy is now the 3rd guy, like you're in the lineup.
Yeah.
Might not see, Brody Malone on high bar or something. He missed that week. We got to put someone else in. Like, it's cutthroat. It's tough. You can ask, right? After Riley made national team, his parents asked, so what's harder, making national team or making lineup at Stanford? He said, making lineup at Stanford. And I was like, he's probably right.
Oh my gosh, and I mean, I think that's just, that tells you how much depth Stanford has, and then also that all the other, don't sleep on you guys, because you might be 15th right now because of unfortunate circumstances, but it's coming back, and the other teams need to be on the lookout. That's about it we have for today. Any other segments went out the door because we had such a great conversation, so that's good.
That's the best.
Hey, that's fine.
It's organic,
It's a great conversation to have. I feel like I learned a ton, and I'm sure the people that watch will learn a lot. To end it on a positive note or a good note, either of you can take it, both of you can take it. Just something, whatever, if you have anything to add, or if you have something positive that you can take from building Virtius, Ambert, or just, the experiences of the past year, Syque, whatever you want to end it on, we can just, wrap it up.
I think there's a process of falling in love with the sport again from a different perspective. Whether you're a fan and you don't really know much about the sport, or you're somebody who's been out of the sport and coming back into it, I think this is actually a really, really good time. And I'm really encouraged by seeing and interacting with a lot of young people now who are getting into it. For what reason do you do it in 2021? Because you better have a good reason, but if you do, thank you for keeping this going.
Man, that was a beautiful ending. No, just thanks for having us. Really appreciate it, and really hoping that the story gets out there. Thank you so much.
Here's the one interesting thing that we can ask people is, if you could have whatever competition between individuals or teams, what would you like to see?
Okay.
Right, because we might be able to make some of those happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be interesting to kind of interact with the audience and be like, who would you want to see, 1v1 or team v team?
Well, there we go. We can end it on that.
Perfect.
Comment.
Let us know.
And let us know. And we will follow along with that.
I love your passion. I'm so glad that you're doing this.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Some other time, I want to know how you got yourself wrangled into this whole thing. But it's awesome.
Interesting story for sure. But
it is.
That's a conversation for another time. And hopefully, at some point down the line, I will be able to meet you all in person. I saw you kind of from afar on the media deck, Syque. I could see your.
I knew you were there. I didn't realize till I had already left.
She sprayed Lysol at you.
Yeah, that's
too far away.
Sprayed it in your direction. you and Riley to, create that COVID bubble so you didn't get anything.
Exactly.
But, and also, I might be at men's NCAAs. That's still, I'm trying to figure that madness out, but we'll see what happens.
Fun meet. It's a fun meet. Is that not on the same weekend as women's, or is theirs the week before?
It is the same weekend as women's. And that is our problem is that really, although I say there's a team, there is me and my husband, for the most part, I'm doing all of our content right now. So it is the question of women's or men's. And if I go, am in person for one or the other, then getting coverage from like a freelancer or contractor or somebody for the other meet, because we are going to, no matter what, have coverage of both meets. So that's kind of the dilemma that we're having. And then for the women, apparently right now they're basically saying it's going to be minimal in-person media, and a lot of virtual credentials, which is totally fine, like whatever. And then I think for the men, they're just kind of like whatever, like there aren't going to, I guess, be as obviously as much media there. So I think they're just like, come on if you want to come on. So
well, on the men's side, it's probably the last time you're ever going to see Minnesota compete ever.
Yep.
So that's like, and Iowa. There's a lot of good stories, kind of, bittersweet.
It's going to be a great meet. And I've never actually been to men's NCAAs. I was at women's in 2018 when I was working for Inside Gymnastics. So, but we'll see how it plays out. And I don't know. We'll have coverage either way, but we'll see which one I get to be in person at. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I will be in touch and talk to you later.
Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.